In this episode, I'm talking about hobbies and wasting time, the concept. But we're just kind of vibing. I wasn't sure if I should split these up into separate videos, but since they're sort of related and all on the same topic, I decided to keep them together. So please enjoy. I have heard so many studies talking about how hobbies can make you more productive. And while I think they're probably true, and I'm all for performing our best at work, I don't know that these studies are always approaching the topic in the best way. And probably most people with money are interested in ways to improve their workforce. I don't think that's probably a surprise to anyone. Unfortunately, that means that a lot of times research exists to serve the needs of commercial or economic interests, not the needs of people. And there's no shade on scientists because they're just doing their jobs, but I still don't love it. And yes, I realize that a really strong argument can be made that increasing happiness and efficiency at work has a huge effect on our well-being because, after all, we spend a lot of time at work. But I'm still left with a question. Why can't we just have hobbies because they make us happier? Another thing we don't realize about hobbies, because we've been conditioned through our education and jobs, through lines at the grocery store and meetings that drag on with no purpose, to think of unproductive time as wasted time. In the process, we lose sight of the fact that time we enjoy is not wasted time. And it's not just not wasted, it's one of the best ways you can spend your time. You can do so much for yourself just by taking time to do things you enjoy. You can prevent burnout, you can infuse joy into your life, you can connect with yourself and with other people. You can remember that your worth is not in what you do. There are just so many benefits to having a hobby and doing something because you enjoy it. Yeah, I'm a millennial and I feel like this is something that my generation on the whole has lost. I think a lot of that is the cultural and economic hand we were dealt. The pressures of having a ton of school debt, wanting to be able to live the kind of lives we grew up living with the same sort of standard of living. We want to provide well for ourselves, for our families. And I also think that part of it is that we've been conditioned our whole lives by people seeing us get excited about something and saying, oh, is that going to be a way you make money now? Is that going to be what you do as you grow up? Are you going to start a side hustle? Are you going to start an Etsy shop? There's nothing wrong with making something you love doing into a side business or side hustle. I support it. I'm here for it. But we end up putting so much pressure on ourselves, even with the stuff that's supposed to be fun, because we want to make some money at it. There are plenty of things in the world to make money at. And that thing you enjoy, you don't have to put pressure on yourself to make that make money for you. Yeah, there are studies that show that hobbies help your mental health and make you more productive at work, etc., etc. But I feel like a lot of people I know are addicted to their work, or at least that's the impression they want you to have. They do have hobbies, but they're socially acceptable ones like watching sports or working out. Or they obsessively turn their hobbies into something they can use for work. And I think it's a shame that we think we have to wait until we're in our 80s to do the things that we really enjoy, to take the time for them, to even allow ourselves enough time to wonder if we have the time for them. Sometimes, if you wait long enough, the things you thought you'd enjoy doing, you don't really enjoy them the way you thought you would. That's something else I've noticed about hobbies. When I've been in the middle of burnout, I've wanted to pick up a hobby because I know it's rejuvenating to focus on something. But I'm so burned out from doing things that I don't even want to do the things that are life-giving to me, that do bring me joy. So hobbies are a really good form of preventative self-care. That's where it's at, really. And that comes back to this concept of time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. Because everything we're saying about time, the concept of wasted time, that's an industrial concept. It's a new concept, not a super old one. For most of human history, things just took the time they took. And sometimes that was annoying, I'm sure. But on the other hand, what else were people going to do? You did the things you needed to do. This included working a lot. But when the work you had time for that day was done, you could play an instrument or write a letter or do any number of things you enjoyed without feeling guilty, like you weren't doing something that mattered enough to justify the time you were spending. Where did that go? I think we need it back. For me, painting is a hobby. Would I love to make my living making art? Absolutely. But I don't need to. This is something that brings my heart a lot of peace and joy, and if I start bringing money into it, I'm scared that it's going to change how it feels for me. I'm not saying I'll never sell art, but right now I do it just because it brings me joy. And if I insert money into the equation, I don't know if it will bring me as much joy. Because with money comes pressure. So unless I'm able to separate myself from that idea of if someone's going to be paying me money for it, it needs to be perfect, which I think I could do. I certainly have done that with my writing at different times because, maybe the thing that I wrote is the best that I can write, but it's not perfect for the client. And so then I have to rewrite it. Or, maybe they're just not really paying me enough for me to make it perfect. I have to make it good enough. But, it's different with every single thing you make. You put pressure on yourself to give them the best product that you can. You push yourself to be as perfect as possible, or at least I do. And so I think actually the thing that having a hobby gives you that's really good, especially if you are a high achiever or a perfectionist, is an area where it doesn't really matter. Like the thing that you're doing, it doesn't really matter. And knowing that it's 100% true that it doesn't matter. Some people like to use their hobbies as talking points, if they're trying to make conversation with someone, or they like to go to clubs and stuff to connect with other people who practice those same hobbies. And that's cool too. I should probably do more of that because I need to spend more time talking to people. But for me, my hobbies are things that allow me to take care of myself. They help me remember that not everything has to be perfect. And the thing is, when I am reminding myself that everything doesn't have to be perfect, things turn out a lot better than when I'm freaking out over making them perfect. And that's interesting to me. It's an interesting thing to know about myself. It's an interesting thing to experience. And that's another thing hobbies do. They open up new avenues, different ways of being, ways of existing in the world that are different than most of us are used to. I think most of us are familiar with being students, with having jobs and bosses, with the ways we interact with our friends and our families. We're used to the roles that we play in various communities we're part of. And honestly, sometimes it's nice to be able to take a step back and explore new things. Every therapist I've had has known within like 2 seconds of meeting me that I'm a type A, perfectionistic kind of person. I guess it's not hard for other people to figure that out, especially if you're a trained professional and you're not me. But when I crochet, that perfectionism just goes out the window. Sure, I want whatever it is I'm making to look like what it's supposed to look like. If it's going to be an octopus, I want it to look like an octopus. But I can just kind of be free to make mistakes and do whatever. Why? Because in that context, I understand that no mistake is a big mistake. And I also know that if I do make a mistake that's going to make it not look like the thing it's supposed to be, I can always undo something. And that's been an invaluable skill for me to develop because I've been able to transfer it into other areas of my life. I don't know if you struggle with those same things or not, but if you do, you know what I'm talking about. It can be really tough out here. You're going around thinking in your little noggin that everything has to be perfect all the time. You think that's what people expect of you because that's what you expect of yourself. It's not really a fun way to be. It is tough. And I've been there. I'm still there sometimes, a lot of times. But having a hobby has allowed me to take a step back and realize that I don't have to be so perfectionistic all the time. I love this format. I don't even have to show my face. I can just be like, paint with me and let's talk about hobbies or about how wasting time isn't really a thing. I guess I can't just go around saying that wasted time isn't a thing because it actually is. But I think that it's a phrase we throw around a lot when really time is only wasted if you're not enjoying it or you have no intention of learning from it. If either of those things are happening, I don't think it's a waste. I saw a quote the other day from John Powell that said, "The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." And while that's a huge generalization, I think it's probably true for most of us in most situations, but things like hurting someone else are still mistakes, even if you learn from it. Even though I understand the limits of that phrase, I like what he's saying. And I think it's similar if we think about the concept of wasting time. Because if we think we're wasting time, then we're probably buying into this underlying myth where we think that our time is there for us to use, like every second of it, and that we have to use it well, that we have to do something with it. And I realize I just talked about Max Weber and the Protestant work ethic in my last video, but I think that's part of what's at play here. I'm Protestant. I'm not trying to criticize Protestants or Christianity as a whole, but that particular way of living, thinking that we have to do something with every single second, that is not a great way to live. It's a bad way to live if you're just a normal human being. It's an especially bad way to live if you're a Christian, thinking that God wants or needs you to make use of every moment of your day when He literally put us on earth in a garden for us to enjoy, when He not only told us to rest, but rested Himself. When Jesus came and said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." I'm not saying that we shouldn't work hard or that there aren't things that God wants us to do if we follow Him. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to do worthwhile things with our lives. I'm just saying that I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to optimize everything when we're not even wasting time in most of the moments where we think we're wasting it. I feel like the next time you think like, oh, this is a waste of time, you should ask yourself like, did I enjoy it? Did I learn something from it? Could I learn something from it even now? And if the answer is yes, you weren't wasting it. I think that's all.